So I said that I was going to try to do an update every day. I've never posted TikTok every day, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try to cut this one a little bit short than I did yesterday, just to give you a summary or an update of what's going on. So I noticed that on my last video, the search bar is on Eric and Derek's divorce, which is super funny to me. I'm going to tell you a little anecdote about that. But in the case of me and my parental rights, as far as my child custody case and just protecting my rights as a mother, today in the hearing that we had, the judge did rule that the defendant that I brought the complaint against was in contempt of court in a way that they're not going to move forward with some certain things. His lawyer does still want me to pay her some fees. The judge reduced the fees because he said that, it just wasn't applicable. I'm doing my best. But he totally recommended that I get a lawyer, which is wonderful. I mean, I love a lawyer. It's just so expensive. But I do think that now I have substantial evidence and documentation that I can hopefully get pro bono support. I hope that I can. I'm going to check some few sources and find out about that. But I want to tell you an interesting thing about Erica and Derek. My name's Erica. One of my first adolescence experience as a teen, I was probably 13, 14, I went to science camp at Clemson University here in South Carolina. I got really good grades in school usually, and I made a high score on the PSAT. It's like what you take in middle school. And they were like, you get a free camp. And so we went to camp, and the camp was a week long. And it was, you got to stay in a dorm, and you got to take college classes as like an 8th grader, So I picked 2 classes, and all the girls were in one dorm, and all the boys were in the other dorm, and we had RAs and camp counselors that chaperoned us and stuff like that, and try to keep us apart. But one of my first crushes, his name was Derek. He's from Charleston. He was in the other dorm, he was a part of the group that came to camp there, and that's why I met him. We used to write each other letters in between classes. So when I saw the search board come up, I said, that's really funny, because it's those long time relationships. We always stayed friends. We actually ended up I actually ran into him again. I didn't see him for years after camp, and then I ran into him again on a cruise. I was on a cruise ship, and he happened to be working the tour guide, and I was on spring break with all my college buddies or whatever, and he was a tour guide. I was like, hey, what's up? And then he decided to transfer to my school at Lander. But what's funny about it, it's really interesting. I always drew back to the point. There was this story. He probably doesn't want me to tell this. I might get in trouble. But one of the reasons that we kind of split different ways is because he fell in love with another girl, and she worked at McDonald's, and he and her got in a lot of trouble. They decided they were going to rob the McDonald's where she worked one night, and he ended up losing his scholarship to play football at Florida State University. And sorry if I'm embarrassing you, but it's no hard feelings. I would totally support you. When he came to my school, he ended up being my neighbor for a little while, and he played rugby and stuff, and he broke his ankle at one point, and I kind of went over there and took care of him. But we always stayed friends, so when I saw that, I was like, divorce is kind of funny. It's kind of hard to say, but it's very relevant. You know how you're when you're breaking up with somebody, they always bring up your ex. It's what about your ex in Louisiana? And I'm like, gosh, I haven't seen my ex from Louisiana in 10 years. What does this have to do with my current relationship? I said I'm going to keep this short. I'm staying under 5 minutes. That's just kind of a little banter. I'm a storyteller type person. If anybody sees this and they're embarrassed, tell me, and I'll make this private so nobody can know about our childhood trauma. My son plays soccer now. They won the championship for 3rd grade. So we're going strong. Sports, yay.
Let me tell you a story, folks. Once when I was outside, I used to see.